Hi, have you ever wondered how you can make sure that when you apologise to your kids, that they really feel like you own your behaviour and they can see that you genuinely care about how you treat them? Today, I want to talk about what does a meaningful apology look like and sound like, and what are the keys that we need to really think about when we're trying to get through to our kids that we really do own what we've done and that we're not comfortable with our behaviour. So my name's Jodie Thornton and I'm a parenting coach, and one of the things that comes up for me quite often in my work with clients is that there'll be something that my clients have done that they're just really not comfortable with, and they still feel that pressure of, can they believe that I really genuinely didn't mean it? Or how can I really own the fact that I should be able to be the adult? I should be able to keep calm. It's not up to them to manage my feelings. And then another angle that can sometimes come up as well, it's like, how do you really own your behaviour and apologise for what you've done, but not actually weaken the message about like a behaviour that they were having that kind of was the trigger for it, to make sure that it doesn't feel like your apology is weakening the message that whatever they were doing was not okay. So what is really important about apologies to our kids is a couple of things. So the number one thing is that I want you to know that everything is recoverable. Whatever has happened, healing is possible. And some of the time when we get really worried about what we're doing and how it's impacting our kids, like obviously a certain level of awareness and respect and consideration about what we do with our kids is important. But when we're in that place of panic where we're worried about how we're treating them and what that's going to do to them in the long term, often what that means is that we are still holding on to pain and hurt and things that have happened to us in our own childhoods or even as adults. We don't know how to process that. And so therefore we have this idea that when you make a mistake or when you make persistent mistakes with your kids, that is somehow kind of like accumulating on them as wounds. And that's going to really attach to their psyche and really be hard for them to process at a later date. And the reality is that with the right support and the right connection, the right empathy and the right strategies, healing is really possible. Healing is possible not only with the person who has done the mistake, but also if someone has hurt us, it is possible for us to heal even if that person never participates in any kind of reconciliation or any kind of repair process. And when we haven't had the experience of being able to heal what's going on for us, we start to get much more panicked about what's going on between us and our kids. And then the reason that it's really important that we know that it's possible to heal and repair our relationships is that we can start to get to a place where there's a very small window of what's appropriate and acceptable parental behaviour. And then it becomes really a high pressure situation. And then, of course, like paradoxically, we end up behaving worse because we're focused on this very narrow, I have to be calm, I have to do this, I have to do that, got all these rules, and it makes it really hard for us to just be naturally ourselves and to make mistakes and to repair when things go wrong. So the first thing we want to really think about there is that relationship repair can happen at any point after the event happens. There's no deadline, but the quicker we're recovering from the day-to-day issues, the easier it is for our kids not to pick up baggage around it. The quicker we're recovering from those day-to-day issues, the more they're not seeing a pattern and then interpreting that in a certain way, and then that becomes the baggage that they carry. So I want to bring that like kind of two pieces there. One is the more you practice this, the less baggage there will be. But secondly is that you don't have to panic about all of the things that have happened before, and you don't have to panic if you're not in a place to be able to apologise or to do relationship repair straight away. We will get to it. Now, when we do skillful apologies, the number one most important thing, like definitely the healing is absolutely a wonderful gift to any person. But the thing that really makes me excited about people knowing how to do skillful apologies is that if our kids know that when we've done something that's not okay for them, that we care, that we own our behaviour, and that we are willing to sit with them in their pain about whatever it is that we've done, then they are more likely to bring up something that we didn't realise we'd done. How many times can you count? So everybody I know would have dozens and dozens of times where their parents have done something to them that they're not cool with, and they just never bring it up because what's the point? She wouldn't understand. She wouldn't believe me. He wouldn't recognise that it matters. He would tell me, or he would be dismissive. All of these things, right? The conversations are just not happening. You're not even getting the chance to actually do the repair because people aren't bringing up the issues. Now, in a lot of cases, that's appropriate because the person really wouldn't know how to handle it well. And perhaps if it's something that's worrying you, you want to process it with somebody else. But here's the thing, is that when we know how to do skillful apologies, our kids won't take that view. Our kids will know that when they say to us, "Mum, when you said this, it hurt," they will know that we will not get defensive, that we will not try to tell them that it's their fault, that we will not be dismissive, that we will genuinely care and genuinely want to hold space for them while they process it. Now that is just, can you imagine the depth of relationship when you have 100% trust that you can bring up whatever you want anytime and it can be handled well, that the other person's not going to be sent into shame. And then, a lot of people I know have this situation where if they were to bring something up that someone else has done, the other person gets so stuck in shame and so hurt about themselves that the person who's had on the receiving end hasn't actually had any space to process how they feel because the other person has felt so bad. And so when our kids know that they can bring things up for us and we can handle it and we can take a breath if we need to, and we can take some time and come back to it if we need to, but we know we can own our behaviour without it being a problem, then the depth of trust and beauty in that relationship is just, it gives me shivers. So how do we want to do it? So the first thing I want to say is that when something happens, if you are still emotionally agitated about it, then all you're going to do is just own your behaviour as best you can. So in an ideal world, if you would be able to say, "Look, I'm really sorry that I yelled. I need to take a break," or something like that. Like you can see how there's a bit of tension in my voice and it's, it's not really loving and calm and wonderful, but it's also just communicating where I'm at. If you can't manage to bring that level of calm to the tone, then when you snap, it is okay to snap and just be clear about what you own. So what we want to aim for is nothing about, "It's your fault that I'm behaving like this." You can say, "I'm not okay with your behaviour," and "I'm not okay with my behaviour." That's cool, but we don't want to link the two together. We don't want to link because it's always our choice. We want to always really remove any responsibility from any person, not just our kids, but from any person. We want to remove the responsibility for us and our experience. So we want to just really separate those two things. So if you were cranky and upset and not able to control it, you might say something like, "I am not okay with this carrying on, and I'm yelling, and I'm not okay with that either, and I'm going to go into the next room and calm down." So you can see how that sounds pretty cranky, and if you're not thinking about the mechanics of that statement, it actually sounds like it's hard for me to listen to it as I'm saying it. It's like, oh, that's a bad situation. But you notice there was no guilt, there was no shame, there was no responsibility for the child on what I was doing. It's just acknowledging this is not okay and this is not okay. I'm taking a break if I can. So that's our first bit. In the moment, if you're agitated, you're just going to own your behaviour and let it go. When you are in a place where you are emotionally okay, you feel pretty grounded emotionally, then we want to do the actual apology, the genuine, deep relationship repair style of apology. Now, the reason we need to do it when we're calm is because when we say something like, I'm really sorry that I yelled. I wish I had chosen another way when I was stressed. If our kids say something like, yeah, well, it was really awful, and like come at us with like their like concern about our behaviour, if we're not grounded, the response is going to be, well, here's the thing, if you guys don't, and you know, on and on it goes, right? So you have to be in a place where when they react, if they react in any way that might trigger you, you're able to, yeah, it was really, really hard, right? It was not cool that I yelled or whatever the issue is, but you can see how I'm really I'm able to stay with what's going on. So that's how you know. Now, if that's a couple hours later, no dramas. If that's a couple of days later, no dramas. We're just going to bring it up when we're in that place where we're ready to deal with whatever reaction comes our way. So when you bring it up, you're going to describe your behaviour. Only bring their behaviour into it if you need to like remind them, like if they're not remembering the time that you did the thing. Sometimes when we get upset about something that hasn't really registered for them, we might need to say, you know, you were doing this and then I did that. Just going to describe the behaviour. So I spoke when you were speaking, or I yelled, or I got upset when you asked me for the 76th time. You know, I don't exaggerate. I was using it as an extreme example, but don't exaggerate. Make sure you're really just describing what happened. When this happened, I felt really, really angry and I yelled, and I wish I had chosen something else. Now, if you know what you wish you had done, say that. But if you don't know what you wish you had done, you just know that that wasn't cool. Just say, I wish I'd made a different choice, because I didn't want for you to, you know, whatever the detail is of that apology. I really wish that I had chosen a different way to deal with how tired I was. Or I really wish that I hadn't needed to leave when you really needed me to give you a cuddle, or I wish I had been able to stay, or, you know, and even when there's times like when they're getting upset at us because we're not giving them ice cream for dinner, you want to even say like, I wish I could have given you ice cream for dinner, and I wish I did give you what you needed. It's just that I was so worried about your body needing something less sugary for dinner. So you can see how I'm just talking about what's my behaviour. I'm saying, I'm owning it. I'm not in any way saying because you, then I. We don't want to tie those things together. And we're just going to say, and then leave space for them to say what they need to say. So you can ask a question. You can say, how did it feel when I was yelling? You can ask a question. You can just leave space for them to just say what's coming up for them. You can also ask, you know, where did you feel it in your body when I left, when you were trying to talk to me? Then really just, you want to draw their attention to their experience, and your job is to hold space for their experience, to really be about whatever went on for you, whatever you're feeling now when we think back to that awkward moment. I'm really holding space for you to just process that. Now, they might be really upset and want you to know just how awful you were. And in that case, no justification, no defensiveness. Now, this is all going to take practice, right? So I'm not saying be perfect first time, but the idea being that whatever they say, you're just connecting to their feelings and needs. You're just connecting to how it felt for them. What was their experience? And if it's hard to stay connected to that, then you can, because sometimes it's really confronting to listen to just how hard it was for them when we were not on our best, the best behaviour that we would like to have. So if that is really too confronting, get your mind busy by asking questions. Oh, so you just wanted me to such and such? Or where did it feel in your body? Or what were you thinking when that was happening? And all you're doing is directing your mind to be focused on your child, their experience, how it was for them. And you're literally just keeping your brain busy so that it doesn't go into shame or doesn't go into defensiveness. Really just holding that space. And you might find that your child is a little bit wary to talk about it, or they're having big feelings coming up and they're not ready to actually verbalize them. They're just connecting with that. And that's our time just to hold space. So if they are doing something, they might be colouring in, and if they're doing something and you can see that they're still thinking about what you're talking about, but they're not talking, I would just let that go. Like, let them sit with those feelings, and you imagine holding space while they're sitting with those feelings. Now, if they say something like, like it just doesn't matter, then that's okay. You've still practiced the apology. Sometimes it's because the feelings were too big and they didn't want to go back to it. Sometimes it's because really what happened just did not upset them in the way that we thought it did. Now, when we're apologising, all we're doing is owning our behaviour. So we're not just apologising when it's really upset them. We're apologising when we feel like that's not the way I want to treat you, so I want to just own that behaviour. So if they're just like, whatever, just know that in the event that they are feeling like they can't talk to you about it because they're worried about what your reaction will be, or the feelings are too big, then we know that the more we practice this as like our base level of relationship repair when something goes wrong, the more safety they will have to come back to that if they need to. So for some things, we just move on, and it's just not the end of the world. It was not awesome, but it's okay. It's done. And for other things, if it has actually kind of caused them to feel really uncomfortable, even if they're not willing or able to connect with that in that moment, the more we practice this base level of relationship repair, the more that one day when they are ready to connect with that piece of baggage that they've collected, they will be ready to share it with you. And even if you never get to the place where you're so level of depth of connection with them that they can share absolutely everything with you, the more they've experienced imperfect apologies, imperfect relationship repair with you, the more safety they have to process any baggage that we've caused with somebody else. So whether that's a friend, a psychologist, a counsellor, a teacher, somebody else. And we don't like to think of the idea that, we wouldn't be perfect and then our kids wouldn't be able to process just everything with us. But we want to be, in all of the things that we do in our parenting, the most important thing is that we're setting our kids up with the relationship skills that they need for life. And the more they've experienced imperfect relationship repair, the more they're capable to try what relationship repair works for them, and the more they're able to process things with other people. And so I absolutely, there is nothing in the way of you getting to a place where your child will be able to process absolutely everything with you. But we want to really let go of the idea of perfection. We want to really let go of the idea that we need them to speak to us about what we've done or that they're feeling uncomfortable. All we want to do is get really good at having invitations and really good at allowing them to choose whether they'd like to take that invitation. So, I hope that's been really helpful. The last thing I just want to touch on is that when we want to also talk about their behaviour, so if they've done something that was not okay and that's why you were in a position that you were behaving the way you were, we want to, while you're practicing this process of owning your behaviour and holding space even when it's upsetting to you, we want to just keep the conversations about their behaviour completely separately. When you are really skilled, you'll be able to navigate bringing them both into the same conversation. But when you're in the practicing space, it is very, two things that are difficult. One is it's really hard to make sure that you're completely taking responsibility for your behaviour when you're simultaneously talking about their behaviour. That takes some skill and some practice. The second thing that takes some skill and some practice is to recognise if your child is in any way mixing the two things. So if your child is saying, well, I was doing this because you were doing that, or you were doing that because I was doing this, that's not helpful for them in their overall emotional skill set. And if you don't yet have the skill set to be able to determine are they mixing these things, then that takes time and practice to learn. And if you don't yet have that skill set, then it's not going to be as powerful if you just have the conversation separately. So if you're feeling like the behaviour is going to repeat itself soon, I would prioritise that conversation. If you're feeling really uncomfortable about what you've done, prioritise that conversation. But either way, there's no deadline to coming back to it. And then you can just say, hey, just wanted to talk about that time when you were taking your brother's toys and I'd asked you not to, and he were, yeah, that time that you yelled, that can be the response. Then you want to say, yeah, absolutely, I did yell. And what was happening between you and your brother, like you see how I'm just separating those two things completely. So I hope that's been really helpful. So if I just recap, the first thing that I talked about was making sure that in the moment, don't try and do the relationship repair if your emotional, thermostat is up. You want to be really, really grounded when you're doing relationship repair. So in the moment, you're just going to own your behaviour. You don't have to worry about how they're taking it or what meaning they're taking from that. The second thing we want to do is when we bring it up, we're just going to describe what happened, explain that we wished differently because we recognise the impact it had on them, and then open up for them to have their reaction. And whatever their reaction is, our job is to hold space. That's all your job is, just to empathise and hold space. And then finally, I talked about how we want to separate those conversations between their behaviour and your behaviour. Once you're really practiced at this and you feel like it's going really, really well, have the same conversation at the same time. But when you're practicing, you want to keep them separate. So I would love to hear what you're taking from this, what has been helpful, and definitely pop that in the comments. In the description of this video, I'm going to put the link to register to get my emails. I send emails out with parenting tips, strategies and information, and whenever these videos are open, as well as relevant offers whenever they come out. So I thank you so much for watching.